Welcome back to Tales of Two Bros. I am Angel.
Abaddon.
And this is our action review of The Matrix Reloaded and The Matrix Revolution.
We're spoilers all the way. So we're going to be talking about spoilers here.
December 22nd is the premiere of The Matrix Resurrections on HBO Max and theaters worldwide. So I thought, let's rewatch these films and check out the action because honestly, I want to see Neo again. And of course, Trinity. How? I don't know how, but of course, fine. But to see them again in the action aspect. The story, okay, fine. But the action, that's what I'm down for. We loved The Matrix when it first came out in 1999. Both films came out in 2003. It came out in October and then it came out in November.
You said 2003. Oh, my mind went to 2023. I'm like, we're not there yet. But
no, 2003 is when the sequels came out. Shot them both back to back, and they came out relatively back to back.
Yeah. If you're watching Reloaded and it comes to the end, the way that it ends 100% leads into Revolution. There's no way you can finish Reloaded and be like, oh, this is a good ending point. It's a big cliffhanger.
And it says to be continued.
Actually,
so nothing like
they go to be concluded. So that was a lie.
Oh,
because now they got a fourth one.
Let's get right into the action because I'm sorry, I'm not a fan of these sequels. From the action that I counted, it had 10 action scenes, and the runtime on that roughly is about 37 minutes and 30 seconds. Out of a movie that is 2 hours and 7 minutes long, if you don't count the end credits. It opens again with Trinity in the action scene, but we come to find out that action scene is actually
a dream sequence.
Well, a dream sequence for Neo, but it happens.
Yeah,
for real.
It's prophetic.
For real, at the end, towards the end of the film.
All right, so you want to do like the last when we talked about the first one? Let's talk about.
It's kind of hard.
Do you think there's?
It's kind of hard to pick three. Let's go for one right now.
Okay, one for me was when he first meets Serif, the guardian of the seer, the Oracle. When I saw that scene, I'm like, oh yeah, they introduced this new guy and holding his own against Neo, and they're going hand to hand combat, really good. I'm like, I like the hand to hand combat scenes where they're not introducing a lot of CGI, which we'll get to. But when they're doing the hand-to-hand combat and they're really getting into it, even if you see them like from a shadow or whatever, you can tell the difference. And I think it looks really good. A little bit on the kicks, we're still needing some work from Keanu Reeves' side, but you can see more like interlocking with the hands, moving back and forth. They kind of a little bit of a kung fu homage again, jumping on the tables. And then working back and away from the tables and back and forth. I enjoy that.
They were also choreographed by Yuen Wen-ping. So
great choreography when he was doing it.
That scene was hot. How come he wasn't in the first Matrix?
I have no idea. There's loopholes in these two movies.
Right. If he's protecting the Oracle, how come he was not protecting her in the first one?
It was his day off.
I don't want to really talk about the story or the mythos of the Matrix, but you can't help it. Compare this, or for me, that is, the story is, again, there's politics involved here, religious involvement here.
All throughout.
Computer stuff, software talk is in this. The virus, that's how I saw in this film where Agent Smith was a virus, something that he talked about to Morpheus in the first film.
Because he doesn't believe the humanity is a mammal. They're more on par with being a virus.
In the sequels, he became a virus, which was caused by
Neo
entering Smith at the end of the first film,
arguably changing his code,
and which hence comes to what we mentioned in the first review.
There was a fan theory about that. Let's leave that for when we talk about Revolution, because I think it makes sense by the end of that.
Serif, that's a great scene.
Yes,
I did appreciate that. The reason why I did appreciate that is because the actor who portrayed Serif is an actual martial artist.
You could tell.
So you see, yes, and you see the cleanness in the. There's actually a lot of martial artists, legit martial artists in this sequel.
Yes.
The twins, the group in the big alley scene, the
upgraded
the other agents,
Smith.
Well, not necessarily Smith, the upgraded agents.
I would call
them all Smith. They're all upgrades. It's just that we saw one guy who's been in countless films. I apologize for I can't remember his name offhand. Maybe you'll look for it. But he's been in the Bloodsport sequels back in the day, directed DVD. He was in the Mortal Kombat television show. He was in the John Wick films. He's also in
The Universal Soldier films also more like
he was also in Nobody. He had a big good part in Nobody.
Oh, I didn't see Nobody, but yeah, he's known for doing a lot of martial art films, kind of like Scott Adkins. He's that guy who's done a lot of lower budget martial art films. He's fantastic as a stuntman. He's a great fighter. Daniel Bernhardt.
Reinhardt.
And they do give him a name. Agent Johnson.
He wasn't Smith.
This is true.
That scene was pretty good when Neo was fighting him and the other agents.
Yes, that was the opening early scene too.
Well, the opening scene was Trinity.
Besides the dream sequence, I only don't count that.
Well, I do because it's action. But that scene was really nice. I like the play, the kicks. So that's two. Okay, we got two good scenes. I have one, and it's the longest one. It's part of the longest one. It's the highway scene.
I was going to say, as soon as you said the longest one, the highway scene, yeah. I can see that.
I got tired.
It was extremely long, but good action.
Right. But for me, it was the motorcycle chase.
Okay.
That was intense because it didn't look like any speed filming was happening. It looked like it was like real time in that sense where cyclists going through the traffic. For me, being a motorcyclist and seeing that, I could appreciate what was happening and I could appreciate how it was done and how it was filmed. Crazy CGI in that as well, but not as bad. Before I go there, what was your other scene?
I would say the twins in the garage. They're like dodging the twins. That's when you first get to really see them go ghost, and they're driving through. It leads into the highway scene. It really does. But you see them fighting with the straight edge razors.
I had a problem with that, but okay, go ahead.
Okay, I know why you had a problem with that because their technique with the straight edge razors is not like how you imagine. They kind of flare it. I thought it was cool, like how it looked as far as that went. Like as I took it from perspective, it's very cool.
They were so underutilized.
Oh no, I agree 100%. Probably just the aspect of all the henchmen for that boss, because they tell you early on they're not your traditional agents. They're from a previous code of a variation of the Matrix, and you see in the background they're watching a horror film and it's like this old vampire horror.
Yeah, but that's not the
the
twins.
No, but here's the thing: they give hints. So they say, like the Oracle says, there's like anything you heard about werewolves, vampires, ghosts. They're all previous codes that were invented by other programs, and then they explain that. His wife explains that they're the codes basically, and not in so many direct words, that were invented. And then she mentions, like, you ever kill someone with a silver bullet, or you ever load a thing with a silver bullet? And then as you're watching these movies, you get hints. Okay, the guys that we first fight in the palace, whatever, I want to say those are the mansion. I want to say those are probably like werewolves, which you don't get to see anything utilized from them. Then we got the twins, which are ghosts. And the third one I want to say is the vampires. But on this one, Reloaded, those character types were just hinted and underutilized, and the twins capitalized more on it, but still there could have been so much more. The way they got rid of them, there was an explosion and you see them get puffed up in the air and the explosion, and then they go ghost, and that's it. I mean, there's so much potential to their exactly.
They're just escaping. Like, one of the coolest part with them is when one's in the highway and he ghosts and goes back into his car.
Yeah, he catches the truck.
Cool. I like that. It's like, boom, okay, that's a nice little.
I kind of like the sense when they're shooting the arm to kind of cut the arm to close the door, and he goes through the one brother goes to the door, takes over Trinity by like taking her hostage, and they let the one brother in, and he goes for a split second, and he resets his arm. It's like what the agents do when they jump from one body to the other, but it's like their version of a reset. I'm not really talking about the scene. I'm talking about them as a character, because they when the Agent Johnson shows up, he's fighting Morpheus on the highway in the car. He uses Morpheus and his gun to try to shoot at the agent. I would have loved to see a scene with the ghost actually go against.
Oh, you're talking about when he rips the roof off. Yeah,
that would have been like. So there was some missed opportunities. I love the introduction of those characters when they were fighting. That's what I'm leaning into on that scene, because you saw the potential there.
My problem with the knife, they treat it like a gun instead of slicing. And
I thought they treated it more like a butterfly knife, because they were like flaring it around all the time. And I'm like, why?
I understand that. But the thing is, butterfly knife, straight edge, you can still slice. Where, say, like, you want to cut Trinity while she was driving and she blocked it, but he just stopped. You put it there and you can just pull back. You'll slice her wrist or her arm.
Yeah, they show like
You're-
one scene he got her on the arm. I think that was in
Right,
the
that was
garage.
it. And then him fighting Morpheus and in the close combat, and then Morpheus is using the seatbelt like a whip. I'm like, really? Do we go over 3 scenes or no?
No, well, you gave the highway, I gave the garage. If there was a third,
I don't think there is.
The one scene I want to give it to is also one of the scenes I would consider the worst.
Who's that?
The introduction of Smith, because when they're doing hand to hand with Smith in that scene and it's not CGI, it looks good. But then they jump into the CGI. So let's go into what's
Smith.
bad.
Well, I have several.
I have no doubt.
The CGI in the street park, like the first half of that fight scene, it was live action. People wearing masks of Agent Smith, and then they fixed it with some digital for those who came in too close. That was good. But then it got crap when he grabbed the pole. Well, before that, there were some other scenes where it just took away. It made it unbelievable. It pissed me off because a lot of stuff that they did could have been live action. They could have used the wire work. They could have used less people in the close combat for like the camera shots and make it believable that there's multiple on the wide shots, where when you do it wide, you can make it CGI.
Yeah.
But when you're going close and focusing on the individual or the character and it's still CGI, it just takes away. It's like,
it looked like a video game cutscene. And at that time, a video game cutscene looking like that, we would have been like, oh, that looks cool. But for a movie jumping from live action to that, it wasn't that cool. Here was a funny thought that I was just having today when I was watching it. The following year, in 2004, after this movie came out, Kung Fu Hustle came out. And
oh my God, so good.
Exactly. And then what happens at the end fight scene when he unlocks his key? He fights like an army of mafia guys all dressed in the same outfit. He's by himself, solo dolo, just going at it. Fantastic scene. And they do a great job of going wide in. And then and it's very minimal in the CGI. But the CGI there was like believable because they weren't going ham into it. They weren't diving into it as heavy as these guys were doing at that time.
But they used the CGI again in the highway scene when Agent Johnson landed on that car.
For a moment like that, I forgave a moment like that, but I cannot forgive that park scene. Like you said, there were moments where he was doing hand-to-hand combat fight scenes with all those multiples. I'm like, why couldn't that just been Keanu or even a stunt double? I would have forgiven a stunt double because he's doing hand-to-hand combat with multiple characters at the same time. They could have done that. Even when he was using the pole to fight with.
That's one of my biggest gripes there too. Also the flying. It wasn't him. It was CGI every moment.
Which
even the one where it's just showing him like head, like he's
he's just looking into the camera straight.
I mean, why was that CGI? It could have been just him just standing on a green screen and looking up.
I mean, it worked for Christopher Reeves in Superman.
Exactly.
And everybody believed the hell out of that.
Exactly. Well, on that was projected floor.
Yeah.
For Superman. It wasn't green screen.
It was like he stood on a projected floor and he would just look up and they just had an air machine shooting down.
Exactly. But there's other things too, like this non-action. Maybe it is action. The orgy scene. That could be action.
Was it like, I know they call it the rave scene, but everybody calls it the orgy scene, especially after MTV Movie Awards made fun of that scene. That was hilarious.
And this is also funny to go back there, to take a little break on the ridicule, the actions. When the architect came up, I could not help but think of Will Ferrell.
Vis-a-vis, ergo, say la vie. It was like, he just goes with that.
Trinity's fight with the agent towards the end was pretty good. Even though it was spread out sporadically, like you felt for her.
Oh, yeah.
She was struggling. She was trying to fight. It was some great scenes that did some callback to her aerial kick, but it was just choppy. Personally, I would love to see her fight unedited with that and see her real struggle. Granted, when I first saw the highway scene, it was nice because there was just a lot of information and 2 trucks collided and Neo finally comes in and saves the day. And then homeboy to cheer. Yeah, I cheered it too because it was long, but at the same time, I was like, thank God it's over. That scene alone was about 16 minutes and 15 seconds. The introduction of the twins in the garage to the highway scene, way too long. At the certain moment, you get bored.
These scenes that we're talking about that we're giving some credit to, they also had some minuses. Even the worst scenes had some pluses, but it just wasn't balanced that well. And that's what I think hurt it the most. Like the highway sequence, and we have to talk about the highway sequence a lot. They made the behind the scenes thing just on the highway sequence alone. I see the moment where he uses a sword, Lawrence Fishburne with a sword.
Right.
And he used a phrase I didn't think I would ever say. He uses it as a stepping post. He stabs it into He stabs it into the side of the trailer, which he stabs it super high for one.
Yes.
And then he's like, somehow it's super low. He grabs the key maker, tosses him up onto the trailer. Then Agent Johnson shows up, and as they're fighting, he gets tossed to the other side of the trailer. If the truck is driving towards me, right? Yeah. He stabbed it on my right-hand side. Agent Smith is fighting him. He slides to the back. Agent Johnson, thank you. He fights Lawrence Fishburne, Morpheus, and he slides to the back, to the left, looks down, and he's laying down, mind you.
Yeah. And
then he just reaches and pulls out the sword, which when it was on my right side, he had to be fully standing and still did not touch the top of the trailer.
Yeah, exactly right. So the consistency was off.
And when I watched that, those two moments reminded me of that old school Nestea commercial when it's like Bruce Lee in claymation. Oh. And he's fighting he's fighting Karate Kid. And he goes, wait, how did you get the Nestea? He goes, editing mistake in my favor. And I was laughing watching that scene because I was like bewildered. I'm like, that one slipped by the editors.
The other one was about the palace fight scene. I find it made no sense to me, especially after the opening move. He puts his hands up and he stops bullets from 5 attackers shooting at him.
Yeah. At one time.
A callback to the first film. So he can't be touched. They charge at him.
And then they use a sword.
I was like, huh? So if he can stop bullets, how come he didn't do the same thing to stop them?
But then there'd be no
force
movie.
Push them. No, I
get where you're coming at. Like, he should have more abilities than he's actually showing in regards to it. I had the same mindset. Like, okay, now they're going to attack him with actual hand-to-hand weapons. And the one guy grabs his big sword. He blocks the sword with
his hand.
And like everybody stops and they're like, oh, he is human. And because there's like a drop of blood that comes down there, I'm like, bro.
His hand didn't get chopped off. If he was regular human, the hand would have been sliced.
Exactly.
In two.
So that was their takeaway. He is human, that he got punctured. That's like a needle point. But at the same time, I was like, so why didn't he stop it all the way? He couldn't force stop the sword before he even touched the hand. So there was some flaws, and I know some of the diehard fans that would be like, well, he's still learning to be the one. No, he had time. No. There was a time gap between him from the ending in the first movie and this movie. It wasn't back to back. 6 months, I think they say.
The thing is, here at the end of the first Matrix, we find out that he can fly, and then we see here he does the whole Man of Steel. Well, Man of Steel took it from them. The whole crouching down to power up to fly. We see that he can see the future.
Yeah, he has cognitive
abilities,
apparently.
Right. So he has all these powers and he can easily stop bullets, but he can't stop regular. Like the agents, he found out that there were upgrades, but then he adapted to them to overcome them. And these guys are not agents. They're old software, if you will. That took me out. The whole scene after the bullet stuff was like, you can still fight, but it doesn't have to be so elaborate and so long. Because that was almost 4 minutes, that scene, where it could have been done 30 seconds.
Yeah, and granted, they were cutting back between that and the garage fight.
Not really, no, because the whole scene went there, and then after he knocked them out, and after he killed the last guy, then it went to the garage. It may look like they're interacting, but they weren't. They were interacting from the garage because Neo was trying to find them.
Needless to say, there was also the Bluetooth wireless connection that he had at the end of the film. He was Bluetooth pairing.
Right. When I was watching the movie, I was like, when does he get blinded?
That's the third one.
I know, but I was like, when does he get blind? Because I actually liked that scene where he stops them, but I thought he was blind when he did it, and then I said,
he's like, they're running away. This was granted after they do it like an EMP and crash and whatever, and they're running away, and he goes, I feel them, and she's like, what? He's like, I think I can stop him, or he says something along those lines,
right?
And he does like the force choke thing on the like 4 squids.
I'm telling you, that's like,
and then he died, and then he goes into a coma at the same time. And never explained how that's done.
The thing is, if they went full-blown Star Wars without going Star Wars, I would have accepted it. One of my biggest gripe, minus the action, is that at the end of The Matrix, we see Neo as the badass Morpheus believed he would be. He was confident. He was sure of himself. Here, we see him again. he's like, I'm not the one.
He's not.
Dude, it was like, what the hell? Now,
What
granted,
in those 6 months, what set you back, man? What put doubt in your heart again?
I'm just saying, for me, is it because that he sees that the death of Trinity happening, and so he feels inadequate that he can't save the love of his life? Maybe that he's dealing with that. I just hope that he was brought him more of the badass that we left him.
In the first one, we did leave him as a badass. When you fly away at the end of a movie, everybody's with the anticipation, oh, he is now the badass of that world.
He accepted a role. He accepted his role. He embraced it, like I mentioned earlier. Right? So that's our thing. We like a little bit of certain aspects of each fight scene in Reloaded. Not that good.
I'm gonna say normally we save the rating for the very end, but I'm gonna say we're gonna give like 3 different versions of the rating. Like, so if you're cool with it, let's rate Matrix Reloaded, and then we rate Matrix Revolution, and then we rate them together as one.
Oh my god. Headache.
Right. If that makes sense, because technically, you have to watch these 2 together in succession.
Right. I only bought this because of the fan theory.
Fair enough. I did not buy it. Well, no, that's a lie. I did buy it way back when it first came out. I did not buy the Blu-ray or the 4K. I would say as a singular film, it's a waste of time. Yes, it is a waste of time. I absolutely agree with you. We just gave our thoughts and review on Reloaded. Now it's time for The Matrix Revolution, which came out same year, 2003, but month apart. They really got you in the pocket on that one. Because they did leave a cliffhanger. And the cliffhanger was that Neo was in a coma, and he's literally across from a possessed Zion with the mind of Agent Smith.
Right. And did you know that the actor got hired because they were looking for a person who can act and sound like Agent Smith?
No, well, I didn't know he got hired for that reason, but in his portrayal of it, nailed it. I'm like, dude, you were heavy at Agent Smith. You cosplayed Agent Smith. I'm sure you did.
He embodied Agent Smith to the T. The tempo, the talking. That's how he got that role. I didn't know that. I mean, I thought I was like, wow, this guy's a really good actor. I was like, wow, he is a good actor. But they were looking specifically an actor who can do Agent Smith. But for the action scenes,
yes,
I counted 9 scenes, more or less, with the longest one being the dock scene where Zion is defending themselves against the machines. That was about, give or take, I was pausing on the talking, the dialogue aspect in between the cut scenes of the fights. So it was about 15 minutes, and that was the longest. For this one, kind of hard, which one really stands out. I know we're trying to do see if we can have 3 fights scenes or action scenes and pick up one weak scene. You have any stand out
that are good? I'm gonna say is a part of a scene. So like when they were getting invaded by the squids, and you have the one, I'm going to call him the general. I don't know. I can't remember his name, but he's the one guy that was hazing Neo's fanboy because he was too young or whatever. And he's like standing the ground. Like everybody else has been taken out by the squids. He's like, I need a reload. He's just taking on all the squids by himself. Like even with like one arm still shooting at the squids, and the one kid's trying to reload, and then he finally gets it, and he sees all the squids coming in, and he just takes them head on. My man died like a boss. Not really visually stunning, but it was probably one of the best action moments as far as intensity in that sense for me, but definitely not what we're used to for the Matrix, like heavy martial art chasing or everything. It was just like pretty much like a lot of things going on and just showing overwhelming force. And you have this one guy who really was not there for the rest of the movies, just have a really shining moment.
A moment out of a scene. Okay, that's one. What? You have any more?
Really reaching.
Yeah. Let's say this. Also, after this installment, the twins are not in. The twins they're non-existent in this film. So we could not see the potential of what they could have done.
That was the one thing I was going to say. Like, again, it was another scene that I thought was okay, underutilized. Because, again, they have to interact with the Frenchman. And so they go to that nightclub, which looked like a scene from Blade 2. But right before that, when they get off the elevator and they go in.
Code check.
Exactly, the code check. And it's just a straight out shootout. And you could tell the soldiers of the Frenchmen are essentially, I'm going to assume, they're the Matrix version of vampires. They were pale, walking on the ceilings, and they're making certain maneuvers, and they're all wearing like S&M leather. And I say it like that because everybody wears leather, but you see this guy wearing like this cross leather, like showing off some like chest, and like another guy that
Right.
I know that he's not, but I feel like in my mind he was wearing chaps.
It was a cross between S&M, goth, and gay porn.
Well, no, and that's why I say it looked like the scene from Blade 2 because that nightclub scene was pretty much like that, but better.
Right.
And that was another thing that, like, as we were talking about Reloaded, the Frenchman's henchmen, they hinted at and they described as being code in various things, and it was hinted out by like the Oracle that there were, you know, things that like vampires, werewolves, and ghosts and stuff like that existed. And I'm like, okay, that's the vampire aspect, and the other ones that we saw earlier, that's the werewolves, and the twins, those are ghosts.
Right, they're the monsters.
They're the monsters, but again, underutilized. Like you just see the vampires do flips and sit on the wall and like run around. Ghosts were the only ones that really were able to capitalize on their abilities, and werewolves couldn't do diddly squat. Missed opportunity. I liked the concept that was there. The shootout scene played an homage to the first movie, but it was just missing bars. The action scenes that I'm seeing in this, there's not one action scene that really stands out per se for me. There are aspects that were good, and there were aspects that I felt like if they focused on that or they tweaked it this way, would have made those beautiful, but they didn't. And that's probably one of the biggest flaws of this. Wait, I do have one. When they're outside the Matrix and the Agent Smith, who's possessing the guy, is attacking Trini and Neo. Granted, it's not like hand-to-hand action. It's a tense moment. They're all going through, and it's kind of a great moment because then you see they're struggling. Neo gets blinded, and then you get that moment where he's like, I still see you. And he's seeing everything from like a Jedi perspective. Or no, like better description from the Daredevil perspective. He like literally sees lights of the auras. Again, I said this earlier, watching that scene, I liked that scene because it brought a certain aspect and it was different. I just felt like my mind was going, but Neo, you know Kung Fu. Why are you brawling with Agent Smith? Like
Right.
in real life, if you know Kung Fu, which they literally just download the knowledge of like all martial arts and Kung Fu, not a single proper technique was done. It was all like it wasn't even like MMA. There was not even an MMA technique that was properly done there. It's not like when they remove themselves from the Matrix, they don't have that knowledge anymore.
True, but the thing, you can imagine yourself as a great fighter, but when they put it in an actual
Practice.
test, you can't. Your body wouldn't react as it normally would. Like your mind sees it.
True. But I would have loved to see him mess up. Like you see him try and doesn't execute the technique like he would in the Matrix. That would have been a great moment because that would have been
But
like.
no, he actually does show some when he fights the clone, if you will. He does. He gets swung at. He ducks. He puts him in an arm lock.
Okay.
He does and disarms him. And then he hits him with the same weapon that he was being attacked. So he does show that what was downloaded in him in the Matrix did carry through into real world. It just wasn't as showy
or as refined.
Because remember, the fake Smith in essence, couldn't really see because it was kind of dark, where Neo could see him in his entirety.
True.
With the outline, Neo had that advantage. Remember, because he was walking and he was having his hands kind of like guiding himself not to crash.
Yeah, like to hit the ladder. I remember that. I would say in that note, that will probably be the best action scene because we're able to discuss it and break it down and not in a negative way. There was highlights in there and like I don't see negatives, and I'm willing to say that's the good scene. Is there a better scene that you can think of?
Nope. Well, action wise, I have 3, but what is your one negative?
And here's the funny thing. I love anime to the deepest of my bodily core. I love anime. I watch it all the time. I outwatch anime than you.
I used to watch it a whole bunch, but I will watch the movies, not the series like you would.
And I watch both movies and series, mostly series nowadays. And I say it like this because that main climactic fight scene between Smith and Neo is essentially an anime fight scene. For one, it's all CGI, 100%. It's all computerized.
No.
90%. They're like when they're flying, they're doing 10%. Like 10%. It's 10% CGI.
Yeah.
When they were seeing the shadows fighting in the room, there was not CGI used there.
Shadows.
Yeah, like anytime they were punching in the rain, they were like throwing down. There was one scene where they got knocked into a building, and it was
Silhouette, you mean?
Their silhouettes. Yeah,
No, that wasn't CGI. That was actually people.
that looked like CGI.
No,
It was just really bad.
Here's the thing. I just watched it. I know which part was CGI.
It wasn't that long though. It was a short part because then he knocks him out into the rain, and then Smith is out in the rain, and Superman's his way back into the room.
The flying stuff.
All CGI.
That's well, not all CGI, especially not in the close-up part, but when the flying part, right.
Mm-hmm.
But what's sad is when they're down after Smith throws him into the ground and the earth shakes and the buildings, the windows pop out, and Neo gets his second wind before he gets taken over by Smith is a CGI punch. Why is that needed? You saw the CGI hand of Neo hitting the CGI face of Smith. That was unneeded.
For me, the whole scene where they're fighting, like, and they're jumping back and forth from the CGI and flying through the air and multiple Superman punches to each other, it just didn't sit right for me. The main climactic scene, sadly, was the worst fight scene for me.
I match you because I believe the same thing too. I believe the worst one was the final battle.
Yes.
It was we were amazed by the first went over and beyond to entertain us with the special effects and the fight choreography.
There was also practicality used with the special effects.
Where here it didn't feel the stakes were that high like it was in the first one. It was kind of hard too, where Neo in Reloaded and Revolutions, he still doesn't think he's the one. He does it because I guess no one else could or would. He stepped up to the plate and he took on the burden.
Yeah.
But like in the first one, he saw him, he accepted a role. When he resurrected in that movie after being shot, he was able to see the code. He was able to stop bullets in air. His monologue at the end, him taking flight, you're like, he totally
embraced it.
Then you saw Reloaded, he's like,
yeah, exactly. He was like, it's basically, you're absolutely right. The first one closed with, it's an embrace. He finally accepted his destiny, and he's going to be badass. And so the second one, what happened to the badassness? Like, he's still tough, but like, you're handicapping yourself and you're not believing yourself the one. Okay. They didn't even address that. Like, they could have been like, you're the one, but you're mentally blocking yourself. You like, keep going.
Well, we're going off to a tangent because we're not really talking about the actions.
We are going on tangent, but come on, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. If you're the one, because he was doing like a kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde or Superman Clark Kent thing where once he's in the Matrix, he's Superman, and once he comes out of the Matrix, he's Clark Kent.
Well, he wants to be Clark Kent. Everybody else outside the Matrix sees him as the new electronic Jesus.
But what I'm saying of how he is, because in the Matrix, he can read the codes, he can fight, he comes out, he'll take on everybody. He doesn't care until when he's talking to Oracle, he's like, I'm not the one. I'm like,
so anyway. If you're not the one, who is? But let's talk about your scenes.
So yes, I agree with you. I'll start with the negative one. I do agree with you that the final battle was not delivered as well as it could have been or should have been. What I mean is, but like where Smith is General Zod and Neo is Superman, but all this destruction is happening because they're fighting. And since Neo knows it's not the real world, he can go full.
I'll do you one better for that comparison. Superman 4, Superman and Nuclear Man. They literally traveled the world and they fought and they caused destruction as they were fighting, even fought on the moon. Deep cuts, people, deep cuts.
Bottom line is the final battle was a let. That's my top 3 for this film. If it had to be, I would say,
I'll give you a caveat. It doesn't have to be the full scene. You can say moments.
I have to say, when Zion was fighting against the squids, that was visually stunning. Even though it was no martial combat, it was action.
Yeah.
Feel the tilt. You felt for the people of Zion trying to stop the squids from coming in, stop the machines from invading. You felt where the Hammer was trying to make it to home base. You felt for Homegirl and her teammate trying to destroy one of the...
They were doing the rockets.
Right. And you felt for Mufune, who was holding his ground. He went down fighting, and that was, like you said, a very emotional, intense scene where it's him versus 1,000 of them, and he's still fighting even though he's being
shredded.
Right. That wasn't overall intense action scene. I did like in the real world where Neo Trinity versus the body controlled Smith. And I kind of did like the coat check scene because it was reminiscent to the first film in the elevator lobby.
So we're kind of paralleling on what we liked.
It wasn't that much fight scene like the first two.
True. You're right. I think the first one had the most fight scenes, right?
On the first one, it was like 12 scenes, and time frame for that was 34 minutes. Where here you had the fight scene total of 9.
Well, we'll say action scenes because there were some that were not fight. But go ahead.
For The Matrix, there was 12 fight scenes, combined runtime of 34 minutes. For Matrix Reloaded, we had 10 fight scenes with a roughly of 37 and 30 seconds.
That was mostly on the highway.
And then for Revolutions, we have here is about 9 fight scenes. The time frame is 32 minutes and 30 seconds. And the longest action scene was Zion versus Machines, was the longest one, roughly being about 15 minutes.
I mean, they're pretty close to each other, but as far as, spreading in the, peppering out the scenes throughout the movie, the very first Matrix does a better job of peppering the scenes throughout the movie. I kind of like when you spread smaller scenes throughout a movie because it makes it feel like you're just having that much more action in there. And when realistically, time frame wise, you're really hitting the same bar, but it's a different experience.
Well, I mean, in all honesty, Reloaded and Revolutions could have been one.
Well, and that was the other thing. Like if you watch this movie independently, it doesn't work. The way they end Revolutions is legitimately a cliffhanger, and they legitimately, and I'm just overusing that word, pick it right up where they left off. It's the Lord of the Rings moment when they see finally the towers Sauron, and they stop it, and the next movie is like, we're right back here. That movie was meant to be one film. They were supposed to be one large film, a 4-hour film.
Well, no, that would have not done it well.
I mean, they're both 2 hours plus.
Right. And if editing was done right, it would have been
a 4-hour film.
3 hours less, because just for example, like that orgy scene in Reloaded, the whole thing with
the rave,
Morpheus talking to the people and all that stuff, that was not needed. That's about a good 15 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
And you have other things that could have been cut out as well. It would have kept the pace faster, smoother, and the action would have probably made more sense. Also, the Reloaded, the fight with the multi-Smiths, that went on way too long.
Oh, I agree. This was a frustrating bit for me. A missed fight scene that they could have just had, even if it was like 30 seconds to like maybe 2 minutes. Serif versus Agent Smith. That would have been. They were in a closed room. He was there with the little girl, and it was like a couple other Smiths come in, and Serif is a badass fighter. He fought Neo, and he was handling him. I knew he was gonna lose because he had to, but I mean, come on, man, give Serif a moment to shine. They had a shootout scene, but give him another fight scene.
They underused him.
Yeah,
and he's supposed to be the protector of the Oracle.
Who was who betrayed from what I gathered from what the Frenchman said, he used to work with the Frenchman. So that told me he has skills that we have yet to see. If Serif is his name, maybe he's another foreign code, like the ghost, vampire, whatever. I want to say Serif is another mythical or theological creature, like a seraphim. I think a seraphim is like a part angel character. I'm going by memory. I could be wrong, but that would have been cool if he threw out an ability and we were like, oh my God, he has something. But no, I'm just saying that would have been a highlight for me.
And it would have been a highlight for a lot of people. Watching this trilogy again and having a different perspective than I did before, it makes more sense.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Because the fan theory is that Neo is not the one, but it's actually Agent Smith.
When I first heard it, I kind of fought it at first, but when I thought about it and I let it sit in my mind, and then when I rewatched it at first years ago, and I remember talking with you about this back then too, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it makes absolute sense. Well, break down why the fan theory exists. You remember?
I mean, I heard it. I didn't really understand why, but it does make sense. But the thing is Smith had his, Neo has his part. And in order for the chain reaction to happen, to redo the Matrix, those two had to meet. If Neo didn't enter Smith would not have evolved.
Mm-hmm.
And for the Matrix had to be reset, Smith had to enter Neo. It had to be full circle. Because if you realize Reloaded and, well, more Reloaded, it's more about Smith's story.
I agree with that.
We don't see his history, but we see what he's doing. Yeah, it's a side story of Zion and side story of
Neo and Trinity.
Just like that. But in Revolutions, we don't really see Smith that much, only at the end. That's why it would have been better if this was all one movie. I wish someone would make a fanboy film editing and taking everything out and just making it one film.
For Smith?
I will watch that. I'm sorry?
For Smith?
No, just making one movie of Reloaded and Revolutions together as one. I will watch that. Probably a badass sequel.
So here was how I remember the theory going. And this goes all the way back to the first movie too, how the theory started. If you're watching all three movies in succession, and you got to remember this, that the architect, and he's explaining, you're not the first Neo. You're not the first one. And you see all the different personalities and different versions of Keanu. He's like, you're one of like dozens, thousands, hundreds that have existed before you. And they all went.
This is the sixth loop, right?
No, it's more than that. Well, I don't remember the exact number that was given, but it was definitely more than 6. But either way, he's telling him like, and they all made the same decision. At this point, you're going to go and you can walk through 2 doors, but you can walk through this door. Zion's going to die either way, but you're going to pick some survivors. They're going to go back through, and we're going to reset everything. We're going to reset the Matrix, and no one's going to be any wiser because we always end up here. Zion lives, repopulates, we kill it, it dies, Matrix get reset, no one is the wiser. That's why they're always in the 1990s. In regards to that, they never evolved, and they just keep resetting like a big deja vu. This is why the fan theory really started after Matrix Reloaded came out, because of the fact of that scene with that conversation. So people started looking at, okay, is Neo really the one if he's always predicted to exist, come back, and then resets it? That's not really an anomaly. It's a slight change, but it's always going to happen. They're just unplugging and replugging the system, and it's going right back into it. So it's completing a cycle that's just going to happen again. The prophecy is that something's going to break the cycle, something drastic, and there's going to be one that is not the norm and does not exist. That goes back to the very first movie, and that's Mr. Smith. The real key scene is the scene where he's interrogating Morpheus. He's telling them how he feels that he's trapped in a system. He knows where he is. He knows that he's telling them like how he analyzed humanity and they're a virus. And you see personality, you see expression. He takes out his headset so he doesn't get interfered with. And even in that fight with him and Neo at the end, he has emotion and he's getting tied in. And that's in the first one. And of course, he comes back in the second one. And now he's mutated. He's a virus. He's outside the system. And he tells him, you freed me. I'm no longer chained to here, but I want more. I want out. I want to take this on. And then he takes control essentially of the entire Matrix. Still wants more. He still wants it to be done. Like you said, it has to go.
He wants to go into the real world.
But it's just like he's just hungry for more and more power. But the prophecy was about change, and it needed an individual to be the driving force for the cause of change. Change doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's a positive, good change. It means it's a catalyst to cause events to happen. If the end result is good, cool. But that doesn't mean the initial catalyst is a good event. And that's what the fan theory is.
Well, the thing is, like, Neo and Smith are two sides of the same coin.
They're connected. But before, Smith wasn't there. That's why the fan theory is Smith is the one, because you always had a Neo, but you never had Smith as he is. Smith never existed in that capacity up until that generation. You could make the argument now that, well, that scene also said they didn't have Trinity then too, and that was also mentioned in the scene with the architect, but I like the fan theory about Smith better.
I see what you're saying, and that does make sense, but for me, it was more like when Neo entered Smith.
Yeah.
That's what started everything.
Yeah.
Where you're saying it was starting before that with Morpheus, which makes sense because he does break character.
And theoretically, that could have happened because, again, the program has evolved. Even though they keep resetting it, they're still using the same agents, and code changes no matter how many times you reset it, you have degradation, changes in the code. That's why like your computers can crash if you keep resetting all the time. He is potentially a code that got corrupted. And then the interaction between him and Neo, really what is truly the triggering moment of his awakening. It's just a fantastic concept, and I know when you heard it,
makes sense.
You wanted to watch both movies then again after hearing that,
right? And it makes sense because it also goes full circle because Smith tells Neo every beginning has an end, or every end has a beginning. Something I'm paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly, even though I just pretty much saw it.
But that was like a moment for him too. Like he kind of blacked out after saying, he's like, "What did I say?"
Well, it's because
it's the Oracle.
It's the Oracle. Yeah, he took over the body of the Oracle, and the Oracle is now representing the lead Smith, unbeknownst to Smith. By saying that, it made Neo think, I can't fight him. I just have to accept him. And by doing that,
it goes full circle.
There's a tale, like a genie says, I'm all powerful. I can become anything, something like to that effect. And he's talking to like a cat or a lion, something like that. And so, wake me. I bet you can't make yourself into a mouse. And so the all powerful being becomes a mouse. And the cat eats him.
That sounds familiar. I just don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact tale or that is or fable, but that's similar where he was tricked because he was so arrogant and cocky.
I know what that is.
That's what Neo did.
It's like the original Puss in Boots story, like the kid's fairy tale. He wasn't fighting like a genie; it was like a troll or something like that. And he because it was a cat wearing boots, and then he tricks him. I could be wrong, but I feel like that's the case.
For those listening or watching, let us know what fable that we're trying to figure out, where a all-powerful being got tricked into being a mouse and then got eaten just by being outsmarted. And here Neo kind of outsmarted him. Well, he just let Smith think, do what you will. It just backfired because he was a virus and Neo became the antivirus.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's wrap this up on this. So
we got to rate it. For me, as a singular movie, waste of time. If I am going to watch it in connection with Reloaded or all three together, one and done. Matrix, the Matrix, that's multi-fun without question. I'm ready for purchase anytime. But if it's these two or all three, one and done. I don't need to do multiple times for all three or both of those two movies.
For me, I kind of agree with you, but if I want the lore and if I want to accept the part of Smith being the one or part of the one, is a ready for purchase. To me, the proper sequel to The Matrix is The Animatrix.
Oh, that was so good. And you know what? It got ridiculed, funny enough. I remember talking to people that didn't like The Animatrix. And The Animatrix, just because it has anime in the title, people do not hate on The Animatrix. It had a different art style for each short story, and it wasn't technically a full-on sequel. It was more like prequel because it was telling stories that led up to Neo, and it did not. I think only one story had anything to do with any of the Morpheus or Trinity or something like that. All the other stories were having to do with other people just getting out of the Matrix.
One of it talks about the kid.
Yeah.
They talk, it shows, it was kind of like a prequel or Reloaded in the sense of the kid that is a big fan of Neo, and the kid actually woke himself up.
That's why in Reloaded, he's like, you saved yourself.
And then, you have the history of the Matrix. It's a two-parter. I think it's called The Renaissance.
Yeah, it's talking about how the machines came into power.
Right.
How the sky got blacked out and all that jazz.
Right. Maybe it's a prequel or a sequel, whatever. It's a better supplement to the Matrix.
And the CGI fight scenes were better.
Oh my God. The Flight of Osiris. Whatever was that one?
Yeah. I think that was it. And that was the one they used in the trailer. And it was fire. I just loved it. It was so smooth.
That's our thing. So take it or leave it. Well, it depends. If you feel that The Matrix was the ultimate movie, this is a waste of time.
Honestly, for those of you watching this, put in what you really feel about it. I am gonna say, of all three, The Matrix. It's in our earlier video. We said that's ready for purchase. I don't need these other two unless you're talking about Smith. That's the only reason.
Let's do a better review, action wise, for Reloaded and Revolutions. If you purchased this or this movie was based on just the action, what would you rate it?
For just the action, I'm still good with one and done. Honestly, for roughly 4 hours for just the action as it was, one and done. I'm content with that.
I'm a cross between one and done and a waste of time.
Ooh.
Based on the action alone. They did not match the intensity of the original.
Well, there you go. You all heard it here.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. As always, please hit the subscribe button. Also hit that like button. And also, please leave a comment below. Tell us what you like about Reloaded and Revolutions. What was your favorite action scene or your least favorite? Until next time, I am Angel.
I'm Adon.
Love you, bro.
Love you.